Hello, everybody, again. If you don't remember me, Brian Douglas from GitHub. And I'm going to talk about marketing for developer adoption, which is great because our first speaker, right after my original lightning talk, talked about different aspects between recruiting and adoption. This will be on the other side of just adoption. So I'm looking forward to go over that. So this is what I look like on the internet. This is my name. BDougie is actually me on Twitter, or sorry, on GitHub, as well as WeChat. So if you guys are on WeChat, I just started live WeChatting this conference. Not sure if that's a thing yet. If not, trademark me. All right. So I'm a developer advocate at GitHub. I've actually only been at GitHub for about 7 weeks. And so this is all very new for me, but ironically, I've been using GitHub for 4 years, actually 5 years. So as long as I've been writing code, I've been using GitHub. And show of hands, who is using GitHub today? Okay, a few of us. I know earlier I asked who was using GitHub. I wanted to see if there was a difference in between who is using GitHub and who signed up in between my lightning talk and this talk. So if I'll wait for you guys all sign up for GitHub. But I'm just gonna jump right in here and talk about my job. My job is literally to create more developer advocates. And though I am an advocate, I'm looking to create and foster a community of other people to be just as excited as GitHub. I met this young man up here in the second row wearing our GitHub t-shirt, Charlie. And Charlie's very familiar with GitHub. He can tell me Git and the reasons why his company or his open source community is using GitHub. So that's very valuable. It's very valuable for me to come to China and hear that conversation. This is actually my first time in China too as well, in Asia. So I'm definitely enjoying the community so far in this conference and enjoying your city of Suzhou. So you're probably wondering like what a superfan is. And I didn't mention, my goal is to build superfans. So superfans are exactly what they sound like. They're gonna be individuals who know my product from back to front. And it could also go out in the field and actually preach and evangelize what is the purpose of GitHub. And I think the best way for me personally to explain superfandom is by explaining Beyonce. Now, I'm gonna say, show of hands, who knows Beyonce? Is that something familiar? She actually performed here a couple years ago in Shanghai. So I was hoping that you guys are familiar with Beyonce. She's literally a superstar. She's a big deal in the States. I'm from the States, if you guys didn't hear by my accent and the way I look. But yeah, I'm from the States, and Beyonce is a big deal. And Beyonce started off her career in this group called Destiny's Child. Now, Destiny's Child is actually no longer around, but yet her fame and her stardom has continued to blossom increasingly since 2006 when they folded. And I think, did I turn something off? Oh, okay, I hit the button. All right, so one of the best parts about Beyonce is that she has this group called the Beehive. Now I'm gonna explain what the Beehive is. It's actually a fan group, and it's out there really to support her. It's a fan club, and what they do is they're on Twitter, they're all in their community, and they're promoting everything that's all about Beyonce. And I wanted to create that analogy because I think Beyonce does a really good job in building her platform. And I think as developers of different companies, we are out to also build that same sort of platform in those communities, engagement opportunities. Now, it's called the Beehive, and it's because Beyonce is Queen Bee. So I don't know if you guys got the joke yet, but I'll wait for the translator to catch up. But each member of the Beehive is an opportunity. It's a Beyonce advocate. And what I do, which is fun at GitHub, is I'm actually fostering communities to build those same sort of communities to have other advocates within our community. So we run a couple different programs, which I'll talk about at the end. And the goal for me is, to generate new advocates. So if you want developers to use your product, you'll need more advocates. You'll need more people to explain how to get involved into your platform. One cool thing that Beyonce did within the last couple of weeks, we have this in Southern California. We have a festival called Coachella, and through the only quarter of the actual Beehive, they actually started tweeting and blogging about Beyonce's appearance at Coachella and renaming Coachella to Baychella. And this is because Beyonce is the headliner, so everybody's very aware of Beyonce's performance. Everybody looks forward to it, to the point where she didn't show up 2 years ago because she was pregnant with twins. The entire community felt it, and actually a lot of people did not show up because of Beyonce's missing in person for obviously having children. So marketing for developer adoption, these are the three things I'm going to cover. I'm going to cover your product interactions. All these interactions are really key because very similar to our first speaker, Mr. Wu, who spoke on like you have to at least have a good product. You're going to have to focus on making sure your product actually is great. So those simple interactions are going to be the stories that your advocates in the field and your community members will go and lead and talk about. The second thing is going to be about content. And then finally is the empowerment of superfans. So product interactions can really be summed up not just in this, but these are the ones that I like to focus around. One is onboarding. So if someone knows how to use your product, if they can sign up and get some sort of account or get somebody use case out of that, that's the onboarding process. The CLI, a lot of developer tools, focus on developer tools, will have a CLI. And this is the command line interface to like interact with your product. So that needs to be pretty clear and have a purpose, and you should have a lot of good prompts to actually push people along the way. And that's another part of the onboarding process includes. And then overall encompassing, these are all reasons for developers to return your product. Now, GitHub's interesting because it's quite possible that you can actually ship code using GitHub, never actually return to github.com. I worked for another company, which I'll mention later, which that was like the actual problem we had when I first became a developer advocate, is that people would deploy sites to the company, which is Netlify, and people would never return to netlify.com ever. And we had to create reasons for people to return and have some sort of experience for that. So I'm going to focus around onboarding first, mainly, and onboarding is really all about just helping people get started really quickly. Like, make sure that story and the interaction is very clear and very helpful on the first interaction. Just a note, like I did mention, we do have Octocat stickers in the bottom right here and also in the lounge. A lot of these stickers are unavailable. We don't actually have that sticker available, but a lot of these other stickers that Octocats are available in sticker form. So interactions can be opportunities for your developers to have a great story. So a tweet or a mention on I forget what they call it, what WeChat's version of Twitter. All those are opportunities for other people to get engagements and awareness around your product, and those are great. Those are gold, because like I could stand here as a GitHub employee and wear my faded GitHub t-shirt and continue talking about GitHub, but if I have somebody in the community preaching and sharing about that and having their personal interactions, it's very helpful for me, because then my job is easier. So I don't have to actually explain like why you shouldn't be using our competitor or why you shouldn't be using a different version of source control. It should be already very clear when they approach your product and get the awareness. So a lot of the talks we've had so far about just getting awareness through community involvement and speaking and open source is all very relevant, and that helps a lot. So that's what I was talking about, onboarding. But one thing to really note about onboarding is like from 0 to 60, how long does it take for someone to actually find out about your product, sign up, and then either deploy something, ship something, interact with your API? How long does that take? And you should really start thinking about, is it 1 minute? Is it 2 hours? Is it 1 week? If it's 1 week, then you have some serious flaws within your product. If there's some sort of like activation codes that take weeks to ship and deploy, like your goal as a developer advocate really should make sure that that experience and the interaction is at least within like a couple hours. I think that's the most helpful for people with interacting your product, because then if you're waiting a week for someone to send you activation code, you can quite honestly forget about it. I know blockchains come up a lot of times in this. I've actually signed up to a number of different cryptocurrency trading platforms, and that's one of their onboarding process is a little awkward because of some laws that are mainly in, I know, Japan and also the US about knowing your customer, and that could take up to a week just to get activation codes just to participate in sort of APIs in blockchain communities. So that's one thing that I know that community is actually working hard to increase onboarding on and lower the barrier of entry. So the longer it takes for someone to actually interact with your product, the more work you have to do to actually create content and create that sort of platform and that little base layer of involving that community. So I think to sum up this before I move into my next section, onboarding really should not stop at sign up. Like, this is the GitHub sign up screen. which I saw once, like 5 years ago. I've never actually seen it again because I never had to create a new GitHub account. Like you create an account once, so now it's up to your marketing team, your engineering team to get that engagement back. And then it's also up to developer advocate to also be out in the field and find out where's the drop-off point? Where's the period where we can start engaging customers? So we have to start doing more tutorials, screencasts, workshops. That's all possibilities and part of the onboarding process. One thing that I really like about GitHub is that their onboarding process doesn't actually start and stop with the sign-up screen. GitHub, and our last speaker was talking about the Kayan Shah, which is all about open source. GitHub's great because a lot of the projects and a lot of interactions of GitHub will start with an open source project. And we'll start with like a project that you find in your own accord, or it could start with like Free Code Camp, which I know some of us are part of that community. You'll get started with GitHub and a tutorial, and you get that sort of experience, and then you're able to interact with GitHub. So as you find all these open source projects that are out there, you get that sort of interaction to how open source works, but also you also get another interaction, which is if you want to participate and contribute back to these communities, then you will create a GitHub account. So then at that point, then we can start our marketing emails and starting to interact with that community with the understanding that you do have a GitHub account and that you have followed that through that process. So all these communities, all these open source projects are helping GitHub with the onboarding process, which is very helpful. So the second section is about content. Content is really great. I know I've used a lot of developer tools. As I mentioned, I've been developing for about 5 years. So I've used everything from Ruby, JavaScript, Python, Go, all the new fancy JavaScript frameworks. I've been also, in addition to like a couple blockchain APIs as well. My onboarding process always starts with content. It's either a screencast, it's a guide, it's documentation. It's something that helps Sherpa me into that community and help me get my first project shipped and get that sort of experience. Based on that experience, this is when I usually will start either tweeting or reaching out to my friends and telling them of how great my experience was for using that product. And content should also have like a very clear intention. You should have a goal at the end. So if it's to get some sort of engagement on a new feature, get signups, like make sure before you start writing the content, understand like what your goal is for the reader. And then if that goal is achieved, create some sort of internal metric. I know with developer advocacy, it's hard because we're in marketing, but we're also in engineering. So we have the goal of trying to get more engineers and people in writing code. But then we also have all these metrics from marketing to push us to say, was that good? Was this bad? Was that, I don't know. I don't have the metrics for that. So it's good to have at least a slight metric. So a lot of what I've done so far in GitHub and also my previous company, which is Netlify, is all about user growth. So I just wanted to have more user and more signups. So I would create interactions and experiences to get more people to log in and create an account. So within my content, I have a very clear call to action. So when you go through my curriculum, my blog posts, my screencasts, or if you listen to my talk, I'll have a call to action and tell you exactly what you need to do next and what I'm looking to get out of you, which is either deploy this site or clone this repo or contribute to this documentation somehow. And make sure your content has a meaningful enough story. So it's not enough to just simply provide code in snippets and push users along to interact with your product. It's always great to have a nice story and like a good case study of how this product is going to benefit me as a developer. So I mentioned, I kind of alluded this entire time that the company I used to work with, this is going to be my story, which I'll mention. But at Netlify, I started as a front-end developer working mainly in JavaScript. From all the code that I shipped for that dashboard, I ended up starting to write content around that in my interactions with the React community. So then I started writing my own stories in my code. So I eventually became full-time for developer advocacy and moved from engineering. And one of my proudest moments was a content stream that I created around deploying your first restaurant site. So I live in Oakland, but it's in the San Francisco Bay Area for California. And in San Francisco, if you guys haven't, who's been to San Francisco? A couple of us? So San Francisco is great because it's a melting pot of a lot of different cultures. There's a lot of Asian cultures, primarily Chinese, within San Francisco. So we have this one restaurant called the Slanted Door. And this Slanted Door, it's a very popular restaurant that one of my old coworkers built a site for, and it was a very painful process, and it cost a lot of time to actually upkeep. So my idea and my story that I brought to getting people onto Netlify was I'm going to build a slanted door and host it on Netlify, much simpler with the Netlify CMS. So I did that, and I created on the left is Slanted Door, that's the actual site, and on the right is my site that I created. And with this site, you could actually very easily click a simple button to deploy this site, and then you could also follow along in the screencast, which I hosted on Freed Code Camp, as well as follow along on my a blog post I hosted on netlify.com. So you had multiple different interactions that you get to the same content with the actual goal of deploying the site and creating an account on Netlify. So there's me in the bottom right-hand corner. And this is actually what it looks like on GitHub. So the one thing that I really wanted to point out is that on my GitHub profile, so this is the fourth way that you actually interact with this content, which is deploying a site and interacting with the Netlify API in our dashboard. I have this little button which is called Deploy to Netlify. And from this point, you can actually get onboarded without having an account at Netlify in less than 60 seconds. And it's literally less than 60 seconds. The beauty of that is that once you had the idea and the story of, yes, a restaurant site, I understand how those work. It has a menu, it has a form to send reservations, which is once you hit that button, once you hit this button, you get all the interaction all packaged into one repo on GitHub. And now you have an opportunity to interact with my product right off the bat in less than 60 seconds. So my goal is not only to create superfans, but also to create interactions like that only take 60 seconds to have self-realization for. And this is actually, once you click that button, this is the screen you see. Once you click the next button, which is down here, which is connect to GitHub. Without the user knowing it, you're actually creating an account. We do ask for permissions. You do get a window that says, by the way, we're connecting your GitHub account. And then we walk away with a user, and they walk away with a project that they can play with. So if you get anything else from this, like make sure you're creating interactions that users can walk away and feel very, very excited at the fact that they've deployed a site in less than 60 seconds. And I think this has been the focus, the result of all this effort. It's all been communications and excitement and announcements of, hey, I just deployed a site in 60 seconds. Hey, I can't believe this is so easy. I can't believe I didn't have to log into all this other sort of deploy keys and all this other stuff. I was able to get a site and walk away very quickly. So remember, onboarding does not stop at sign up. That's only this one small footnote. You need to create content to also engage that community and engage that developer to also keep them remembering why they've signed up in the first place. So finally, I just want to talk about superfan empowerment too, which is one more thing that I really like. This is all included around support. So this is not mentioned as much as far as developer advocacy, but we are the first line of support. We are the interactions, the boots on the ground, if you may. And we're interacting with the community. We're hearing the feedback, the problems, the excitement, and we're relaying that back into the marketing and the engineering teams to help build more and more features and interactions. One other thing, too, is also within the empowerment is also giving a platform for customers to also provide their content. So this is, I think, there's a lot of American companies have done this very well. Where we'll do either paid blog posts or paid content creation. You don't always have to pay your users to create content. At Netlify, we didn't do very much of that. We actually just got a lot of organic content created just from experiences like I just created. I am actually a host of a podcast, which is called Jamstack Radio. And through that podcast, I would have a lot of different other companies come on and talk about their API and how they integrate with Netlify. And then from that, we'd have a lot of content created around the idea of, like, I had the creator of Gatsby and also some of the developer advocates of Contentful. And from that podcast, we had tons of blog posts about Gatsby and Contentful. Just right after the point the podcast was shipped, we had a lot of examples. So next time we talked about it on the podcast, I could just point to this blog post and this series and this screencast about how to interact with our product and this other tool. Case studies are also very good, too. You should interact with your customers on a regular basis, do interviews, and find out why they're using your product. And if there's a very interesting story, get them to write it out. So that way you can share exactly what went well, what went bad. There's a very popular website called Smashing Magazine, which was hosted on Netlify as well. We We took all that information of them switching to Netlify and making it into a case study. So that way, if anybody else has the same experience of where they came from, where Smashing Magazine was on WordPress and moved to Netlify, we were able to reiterate that story and share that on a regular basis, which they literally just did at Smashing Conf in San Francisco. And they've done it all year round, talking about that case study. GitHub, we're very lucky because we started with open source, which means we have a lot of developers, a lot of interactions that we can talk to. We have 27 million users. I found out last night that Shanghai is 25 million people. So we have just a little bit more users than people in Shanghai. So that's it was kind of baffling the way I kind of correlated that. So 27 million developers worldwide. That's not just in the US, it's also worldwide. That's 27 million interactions that we have opportunities to share stories. So part of my role here now at GitHub is to interact with the developer community through the GitHub Developer Program. You can go to developer.github.com to find that out, or find me later, and I can provide the URL. And through that program, I'm going to start generating content and building a platform for other people to share their stories of how they use GitHub. On top of that, we not only just have users, we have actual code repositories. So we have 80 million repositories. So that's 80 million stories of how people are using GitHub and their unique way of using GitHub. There's a popular talk that Zach Holman was given a while ago about how GitHub uses GitHub. That same story regenerated into other companies about how company X or company Y uses GitHub is a powerful story for other people to share. And we don't need to actually share it ourselves. We can invite other people in the community to actually share that and give them a platform to share that amongst our 27 million users through newsletters, contact, the developer program. On top of that, we do have 1.8 million enterprise customers. So that's also another avenue and a way for us to talk about higher level and ways people use GitHub in a way and actually pay for it. So I personally don't focus a lot on revenue growth because I'm a big fan of user growth. But this is another opportunity for us to talk about something that's more higher level or more intense about how someone uses GitHub. One thing to note too is, well, GitHub recently, we shipped a blog post about how we use our personal ecosystem, which is a GitHub app. So if you're very familiar with how apps and integrations work on other platforms, GitHub is that same sort of opportunity, which is to be my focus as my role at GitHub. We shipped a blog post about how GitHub ships the design system using a company called Figma and integrating that with our GitHub API. So that way, whenever we change something in Figma, we can actually create a pull request and update our design system to update exactly what the design asset looks like. So we wrote a blog post about that. But what's really cool is that though we first wrote content to share about how we use our ecosystem, we now have other copycats of our community who are also sharing about how they use our ecosystem to solve simple problems for themselves. So a company called Apollo, which is in the GraphQL space, they have a common problem where they have an open source community. And in order to create labels and organize your issues in pull request, you have to be an administrator on the GitHub within the GitHub repo. But through a GitHub app, you don't have to give away your access to your repo. You can actually just type a quick command in the comment to label an issue. And they wrote an entire blog post about some simple issue that GitHub, we could have made this feature like in a couple weeks, maybe in a week. But it wasn't a pain point for us. This was a pain point for Apollo. And they were able to use our platform to solve this problem and share this in a blog post. So now this is a blog post that we don't have to share. It's already on Apollo's site talking about how they use GitHub, which is very powerful. So as I round this up and wrap this up, I started off talking about Beyonce and talking about Beyonce's advocates, which are members of the Beehive. What's really cool about that is Beyonce not only doesn't just stop at her career and her focus around this, getting her name out there. She also has a community of Queen Bee proteges. So proteges, I'm not sure if that translates well, but it's basically apprentice. So she actually has people who she's bringing up and giving them a platform to share and become the next stars. So from this new form of Beyonce's focus, she has two young singers, Chloe and Halle. Chloe actually starred as Beyonce's younger self in The Rising Temptations, which is a movie that was in the US. I'm not sure if it made it out here. But she's actually using her platform to raise up new singers. GitHub's very similar. We have a platform which is called GitHub Education. So this is a VIP program for everybody in universities like this one. And we provide free tools for members of the GitHub Education platform to use GitHub, but also use other programs and applications. And out of this, we actually created a whole new subset of that program called Campus Experts, where we can't be at every university in the world. We actually have a couple campus experts in the room too as well. We can't be at every campus around the world. So what we do is we train GitHub users to become advocates and experts of GitHub within colleges and universities. And from that, which is great, is we're literally generating new developers through this university program. And we're doing the same in other different programs as well. And I'll just wrap up too real quickly. These are two experts that campus experts, one Elliot, who's from Colorado with the Colorado University, still attending, and Anisha, who's also going to Arizona State, who's still attending. They're both campus experts who we actually pay and ship to different conferences and teach to workshops for different communities. And they've actually just come on board through the intern program. So I know adoption is not recruiting, but with GitHub, I think we have a unique position where we have developers using GitHub and we're training and maintaining them, where we now have hired them both as interns with the hopes to eventually hire more developer advocates and more people to generate within the program. So this is what we're doing at GitHub. I think I'm a big fan of Beyonce, so I apologize if this is not translating well, but we're literally just enabling more and more developers to spread the word about GitHub. And I think as developer advocates, we should all be doing the same for our products. So we should all be encouraging new and more people to integrate with our platform and to share the good word about our product. So this is all I have. I'm Brian Douglas. I'm a developer advocate at GitHub. I will be around either in the lounge or right here in the front. Find me at lunch. I am more than happy to talk to you. I apologize if the translation, if I don't understand you, but I am more than happy to talk to you on WeChat because I can always Google Translate. So thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of the conference.